Alright, so a lot of people asked me to do a video on Sivakov's training. At first, I didn't understand why, because I thought it was just going to be the same as McNulty. I've done about 600 videos on him. I'll try and leave some links or things to click on, because I've done a lot of videos. But actually, it's quite different, Sivakov. There's a lot of stuff that's a bit rogue. And I also think we're going to talk about some fundamental training ideas that are conflicting. There's not necessarily a winner, but the way Sivakov and his team approaches it is definitely different to how other people do it. So we're just going to go through an overview first. So apparently people couldn't see red, so I've gone for blue and white for hard. That could be harder to see. I'm not really sure. If you can't see it, just rage in the comments. Anyway, green is just endurance and orange is like in between. So probably some of these are a little bit wrong, actually. That probably should be green in reality. But anyway, the zone 2 rides are really hard, seriously hard. Like 280 to 300 watts is standard. What his LT1 is, it can't be much higher. I think in the podcast with G, he said it wasn't that much higher. So kind of interesting. He does a lot of tempo, but only like 20 watts higher than what he rides for 5 hours. I don't quite understand that either. That's something that I don't really get. He does no fatigued efforts, more or less, which is something I want to cover because I think that's really interesting. And then he also does a little bit of torque work, but not really, which maybe is rogue. And he also doesn't really do, all his short efforts are over-unders. So we're kind of going to go through week by week. So the first week was after a training camp. This was a rest week, so you can see hour easy there. Then he did like 3 zone 1 rides. So he actually zone 1, like 199 average. This was a little bit harder at 45 minutes at 280, but the rest of it was calm. They did some sprints, but they would like more high cadence rev out. So you hit like 140 RPM. So nothing like crazy peak power, like 1080, but impressive cadence. And then he started his tempo blocks. Now, what I want to talk about is kind of just like building fatigue resistance. Now, obviously, some people think you need to do efforts at the end of the rides. UAE clearly do not. They think you just need a big LT1, which is driven by riding really, really hard at close to LT1 the whole time. This is obviously incredibly tiring. And the way they make up for that is that the endurance rides, are long, quite long, 5.5, 4 hours, 4.5, 6. But when he's doing efforts, they're really short. So that actually means if we look at the total hours, I know this week is 28 hours, but you only had 1 day off. But otherwise, it's only 20 hours, which is not that crazy. But it's because when he does efforts, they're really short. And when he does actual endurance rides, it's 5 hours. Now, that kind of drags me on to the other thing, which is the endurance rides are long. So you can see 6 hours here. They're pretty hard. None of them are less than 4 hours. But it's specific. There's no point necessarily doing 6 hours after you've done 40-20s because you've got big lactate in the legs. It's better to do a full endurance day. So that's what you can really see is that the training is polarized in the sense of like there aren't many days where he's doing long hours and efforts, which is interesting because other people do. Uno X is the complete opposite. They do 6 hours and do efforts in the first bit. So yeah, that is something to see. But we're going to go through some files because they don't start off too crazy, some of his sessions, but towards the end, they get really, really impressive. So the kind of thing I want to see is like, so there's do some tempo, 76 Newton meters. Here's some 40-20s, 456 watts average. So this is kind of the progression is like he does 4x8, 40-20s. Then he moves on to 10 minutes instead of that. But before that, he does 30-30s, which are obviously easier if you're not doing like 485, 380. It's all about the same-ish. But he's moving on to like higher workload durations. And then obviously you can see at the bottom, he's just doing flat out 3x10, 435, 453, 470. So you can see like there is progression in terms of like he's building up to 3x10 over threshold, probably. But he starts off with just doing like over-unders, which is like you could say is harder, you could not do. But I think, if he's doing over-unders at 470 and then he just bangs out a flat one at 470, obviously that's going to be a bit harder. So yeah, we'll look at some files. So this is one of the sessions that I did think was very impressive. He did 2x20 at 438 watt or 430 watts. Again, you can see these are over-unders. These are standard UAE stuff. It's like 4 minutes kind of, I think I wrote like around 400 and then you just do 1 minute flat out, more or less. Well, not flat out, like 500 watts. So yeah, that's pretty impressive ride. But again, you can see this ride. It's so short, like 3 hours. You basically just roll out to the right, roll out to the, where are the laps here? I don't know why that laps here. Anyway, maybe a couple sprints was what he was doing in between those laps. Yeah, roll out to the climb, bash out 2x20 and then roll home. Very simple, nothing complicated. This one, again, 2 hours. A pro rider doing 2 hours of ride that isn't calf. Crazy. The first one on the TT bike, 435 watts. Then you can see he went home, picked up his TT bike. Next one, 453 watts. Sorry, put his TT bike away, got his road bike, 453. Last one, bangs out 472 watts. So yeah, again, very impressive numbers. I think 6.8 is what I've got here. His weight, 69 kilo. I think I put that in. It sounds about right. And then again, the 40-20s, this was again later on in the month. And again, you can see like these are, I'm trying to see, are these the 4-minute ones? Yeah. So these are like more VO2 max style. So you can see like he does them for 5 minutes 40, but you can see it's like 40 seconds on, 20 seconds off. And it's a lot more polarized. So that's again like a lot more of a VO2 max workout. Well, to begin with, if you look at this, you can see like they're more, sorry, here they are. Here they are, like 500 on, 380s off. So you can see they're not actually like proper VO2 max sessions. Well, these ones are, like you can see 540, 250, 560. So like they're seriously high numbers. And yeah, it's getting closer to racing. It's not surprising he's doing VO2 max workout. The next thing I want to kind of comment on is to do with calf spins. Generally, he does calf spins. He hasn't really had a day off. I'd say he had 2 days off. He walked on New Year's Day, so maybe big night out on Tuesday night. And then he also walked then. Otherwise, always standard 2-hour calf spin, which is quite a lot. That adds a lot to your weekly load. Like, you know, that goes from 23 hours. You're like, oh, that's like a decent week. But if you take off the 4 hours of calf spinning, I mean, he's not cracking 20-hour weeks. This week would be like, I mean, this week was mega soft in some ways, like 20-hour week. And 4 of that was calf spins, or 3.5 with calf spins, and an hour walk. So you can see like they're not crazy hours. If we look at one of the calf spins, I think this is the calf spin, 200 normalized. So yeah, like proper zone 1 stuff. And yeah, just like super mince. So yeah, pretty interesting, I think, in my view, doing calf spins the whole time. Like, yeah, it's nice weather, but 2 hours is quite a lot, and it does add a lot to the weekly load. And then yeah, the last week, you can see he did kind of the only session that's not very structured, which was 4 hours, and he just did 10 minutes, 420 watts, 280 normalized. But yeah, like it's interesting training. I think it works if you know your LT1 and that you're definitely training below. I think if you're an amateur, it could be big risk because you might be training over it and then you're not really going to get many adaptations. But obviously with him, he knows what it is, so you can just train under. And I think if you are an amateur, you do know what it is. You can ride hard. It does make sense because you just have less time, and you can see like this is way more time efficient. Like, I'm not saying like someone who works a 9-5 could do this, but you're getting closer. If you start binning off the calf weeks, the calf spins, like this session here, you could more or less do. Like obviously you change when the times are. You wouldn't do 2 hours on the Saturday. You might do 2 hours on the Thursday, move the 5-hour ride. But like it's looking more possible to do a ride like this because you can see it's not crazy hours every day. And even this ride here, you could shorten a bit. So I think it's like an interesting take on training. And as I said, it's like obviously focusing a lot on just like fresh power and that fatigue resistance is more coming from the tempo work. Obviously torque does help as well, but it's not like he's doing a crazy amount. A lot of the tempo work's going to help because you just get more efficient riding 320 average. So in a race, it's like not as much of a shock. You get better at burning lactate, which again is useful in a race where like you can have lactate spiked from like literally minute 1. And then also just a really high amount of time spent near LT1 trying to boost it as much as possible. I mean, it's a standard zone 2 ride, but obviously doing it harder, people reckon it should get better adaptions. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. No one's ever really done research on that, unfortunately. But yeah, it's just a different way of training. It's opposite to Jumbo where they mince loads or other teams. So yeah, I hope you found this video interesting. If there's anyone else you want me to do in terms of training, let me know. I've done Simmons, I've done Abrahamson, I've done a million on McNulty. But yeah, let me know in the comments below. Cheers for watching. I'll see you in the next one.